Good morning, everyone. How are you all today? Welcome. A little bit of a chilly morning. Hopefully the weather starts to warm up. We're up, we're down, we're down, we're down, and then it goes back up. Who knows? I hear a storm is coming in, but it'll always be nice and warm and welcoming here no matter what. I'm Anthony Crowell, the Dean and President here at New York Law School, and I'm also the Faculty Director for the Center for New York City and State Law. It's a great honor to welcome you, and I'm very pleased to welcome our breakfast speaker, Ya-Ting Liu, New York City's first ever public realm officer, chief public realm officer. I can tell you as a member of the City Planning Commission, I was thrilled when she was appointed. I think this is a tremendous opportunity for the city to have not only this function, but a great deal of work in coordinating such a broad set of inputs and responses to creating an extraordinary public realm. Our city is special. Our city is the global capital, and we need to ensure that its livability, the quality of life, and the reasons people come here are ones that have great meaning and value. And I think that what she's doing is tremendously important for that. Certainly, but as far as the law school goes, we have been in this business, as they say, for 134 years, having an impact not only in shaping law and policy, but really helping to drive civic engagement as the Civic Center's law school and as a law school that is dedicated to training students to enter public service, many of whom are land use lawyers. I see a number of my former students in the room who are land use lawyers, and I'm very happy about that. And of course, I'm very proud that the Center for New York City and State Law also publishes City Land and CityLaw, our two journals. And certainly City Land is followed widely, probably among our most widely followed publications. It is important for us to always remember that the work of public servants is often referred to as thankless. So we always want to thank those who make such a difference in our city and are on the front lines. It's an incredibly difficult time right now for those in public service. So I just want to acknowledge that our siblings in arms are often certainly at the federal level right now, and in certain states having challenges. But I like to think that this is a forum where we have great respect and admiration for public service, but also understand that a healthy and robust dialogue where disagreement can be explored and resolution can be forged is critically important. I just want to acknowledge that Ross Sandler, who usually hosts these breakfasts, is on sabbatical this semester. He's writing a book on public corruption. I'm excited about that. Who wouldn't be excited about public corruption? Not excited about public corruption, but excited to hear what Ross is writing about. He foreshadowed a lot of what will be covered in his recent lecture when he was appointed as the Samuel Seabury Professor of Law here at the law school, and talked about his years not only as an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District, but also as DOT commissioner and working on various issues concerning anti-corruption and public integrity. And I think his work will be not only timely and well-received, but I suspect it'll be an essential resource for many of us in the years to come. With that, I just want to acknowledge some of our team members here. Ben Max is our executive editor and program director, who's been with us just over a year and has done an extraordinary job. I'm grateful for his work. Thank you, Ben. Steve Lewis, who is the counsel to the center and also a distinguished fellow in state and local government law, teaching state and local government law courses. Jeff Weiss, who is a distinguished adjunct professor who is the director of our Elections, Census, and Redistricting Institute, and of course, Veronica Rose, who's City Land editor, and Rose White, who is our City Law Administrative Coordinator. Thank you to all of them for helping these breakfasts be what they are. Now I'm going to ask Ben to come up, give a more formal introduction of our Chief Public Realm Officer, and enjoy a terrific discussion. I will be leaving a little bit early. I actually have to go to a planning commission meeting this morning, but I wish you all a great morning, and I hope to talk to you very soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Dean Crowell. Excited to have such great attendance this morning and some watching on the live stream as well. And it's great to see some new faces, I think, some folks who are here maybe for your first breakfast event with us, and we hope you continue to come back. As the Dean said, I'm Ben Max, Executive Editor and Program Director at the Law School Center for New York City and State Law. Very excited for today's program, and our guest speaker will take the podium in just a couple moments. As Dean Crowell said, he's the center's faculty director, and we have a lot of good things happening at the Center for New York City and State Law, including these ongoing City Law Breakfasts, of course, but we also host other types of events and have some good ones in the works, and I'll give you a preview of those in just one second. We also regularly publish interesting articles on our website, citylandnyc.org. And I host my podcast, Max Politics, out of the center, where I have in-depth conversations on New York government, policy, and politics with a variety of great guests. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. And all feedback is welcome. But I often have elected officials, appointed officials, and others on the show. Thanks again in absentia to Professor Ross Sandler, as the Dean mentioned, who launched this series 30 years ago, and today is the 196th City Law Breakfast, so we have some great plans in the works as we get towards that 200 number, which will be a celebration. Thank you to the events, the marketing and security teams here at New York Law School, among others who make these events possible, and our center team, especially Veronica Rose and Rose White, who help make sure these events happen. Thank you to our sponsors, Con Edison, Verizon, and Greenberg Traurig, as well as anyone in the audience. I know there are many who have donated to support the center. Thank you, and all donations are welcome and helpful. Very quickly, before I introduce our speaker a little bit more, we have two great March events in the works. As long as they stay on the calendar, you'll get an email invitation. Having signed up for this breakfast, you will get an email invitation to these events, but you can jot down in some way that on the morning of March 18th, we are going to be co-hosting a debate in the 2025 race for New York City Comptroller. We're co-hosting that with Citizens Budget Commission. So mark that down for the morning of March 18th. And on March 25th, we're planning our next City Law Breakfast, where we will be joined by the Police Commissioner, Jessica Tisch. The new NYPD Commissioner will be here on the morning of March 25th. All right. Today, we're pleased to offer a presentation by Ya-Ting Liu, New York City's first ever Chief Public Realm Officer, for what I'm sure will be an engaging discussion of how the city is improving public space for New Yorkers. Ya-Ting was named to this position by Mayor Eric Adams almost exactly 2 years ago in February 2023, and will provide an update on the work she's been leading in the role and how the city is rethinking public space and its overall priorities. As the Chief Public Realm Officer, Ya-Ting Liu is responsible for coordinating across city government, community organizations, and the private sector to create extraordinary public spaces throughout New York City and to continue to drive the city's economic recovery after the devastation of the COVID pandemic, which includes rethinking a lot about how public space is allocated and activated in that post-pandemic world. Over the last 2 years, she's advanced major public space policy and project initiatives for the Adams administration, and she'll get into some of those specifics here today, but a few include the city's outdoor dining program, efforts to get scaffolding down more quickly, new parks projects, and other interesting developments like looking to expand the availability of public restrooms in New York City. Part of the work is coordination and streamlining government processes to ensure that enhancements to New York City's livability can move more quickly. Now, to this role, Ya-Ting brings over 15 years of policy, community organizing, coalition building, and government affairs experience. Before entering city government, she's worked as the Director of Government Affairs and Policy for the rideshare company VIA, as Sustainability Program Director for the New York League of Conservation Voters, as Director of Transit Advocacy for Transportation Alternatives, and in federal advocacy for the Tri-State Transportation Campaign. She also cut her teeth in the world of New York policy advocacy on then Mayor Bloomberg's 2009 effort to pass congestion pricing. 16 years later, here we are. So I don't know if there's any retrospective on that in the presentation. That could be its own talk, but She carries lessons from that campaign with her, as well as from efforts she led to advance what was a somewhat controversial light rail project along the Brooklyn-Queens waterfront that was ultimately unsuccessful in the de Blasio era. And again, as you'll see throughout Ya-Ting's career and in some of this talk today, there's projects that move and there's projects that don't. Ya-Ting was also a Peace Corps volunteer in Nepal and a Coro Fellow here in New York City. She has a bachelor's degree in conservation studies from the University of California, Berkeley, and a master's in city planning from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where she did her thesis on how to update New York City's street vending policies. Still a very live topic in policy debates as well. And lastly, in her clearly very limited downtime, she's busy schlepping 3 kids around the city for all sorts of activities, from basketball practices to birthday parties and much more. Please join me in welcoming Ya-Ting Liu.
Morning, everyone. All right. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, New York Law School, and all of you who schlepped out here this morning in a cold, bitterly cold morning. I know right now the public realm is feeling icy and windy, but I think Staten Island Chuck said spring is on the way soon. So hang in there, everyone. Warmer and brighter days ahead. But in all seriousness, thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here and share the work. And it's a collective work that myself and my team, Sonia Gior, Maria Avila Franklin, our Deputy Mayor for Operations, Mira Joshi, and all of the incredible agencies I get to work with, some of whom I see here today as well. So it's so really great to see some colleagues here as well. I hope from today's discussion and conversation, you'll walk away with sort of kind of 3 core things for me. One is why cities now more than ever really need this kind of central quarterback team within government that is really focused on the public realm and all that entails, and we'll get into that. I think the second thing is I hope you walk away here with a clear sense of sort of what our operating principles are, what our priority projects and some of the policies that we've been working on and actively pushing for. And last, I hope you all walk away with a feeling of just being a New Yorker navigating the street, that you yourself can be a public realm avenger. And I will get into what I mean by that, but effectively, I think what we have all come to realize is that, again, the built environment is so critical to the quality of life to New York City, but also making sure that we stay very competitive as a city, attracting business, attracting talent, attracting visitors. And that has such a key role, but we really need all New Yorkers to sort of share in this work with us. If you see something, if you have ideas, we're always here and open for feedback and other fun things that we can all do together to advance the great work in the public realm. So if you're anything like my kids, a lot of you are probably thinking, Chief of the Realm, what is that? And what does that entail? And what does that even mean? So I always love starting my talk and presentations with this slide, because this is usually, this is certainly what I got from my 11-year-old, who's can always bring me down to earth very quickly after some exciting career news. But in all seriousness, this is really what it's about, right? This is the part of the secret sauce of cities, and why, the 8 million of us choose to be here. And part of our remit is to really help stitch together all of the things that, as a member of the public or as a person visiting the city, you're not appreciating about sort of what it all entails to have a really vibrant and wonderful kind of built environment. And it doesn't have to be these kind of big scale events or moments. It could just be, your commercial quarter in your local district, your neighborhood block, to the grand spaces, of Midtown Manhattan. So why should cities focus on the public realm right now? I love this slide. Credit goes to the Municipal Art Society of New York. They, along with a lot of incredible sort of your urbanists, your livable streets, your sustainable cities type advocates got together a few years ago to start sort of putting together a call for action, which is that, again, when it comes to public spaces in the city, what people don't realize is that there is a massive agency alphabet soup that oversees various rules, regulations, jurisdictions, responsibilities, or sometimes not. Sometimes it's a little bit of like, not it, who's responsible for this piece? We don't, so it's a little bit of that as well. And that there really needs, again, a centralized sort of like point person or quarterback team at City Hall that is trying to really coordinate against the agencies, across all agencies, and articulate a real clear sort of vision and mission for how we have better public spaces throughout the city. And in terms of the Adams administration, when Mayor Adams first came into office in 2022, there was still a lot of clickbait about the doom of cities, right? That workers were not going to come back, that 100% remote is here to stay. And so the governor, Hochul, and Mayor Adams came together with a lot of muckety mucks, maybe some of you as well that were part of this effort in this room, I'm sure, to sort of say, how do we actually rebuild New York after the pandemic, stronger than before, more inclusive? And one of the things I joke with BJ Jones, who's the executive director of New York Now, that I am Initiative 10. Because coming out of that effort of all the muckety mucks that asked the question, how do we make New York City more vibrant, better than ever, more inclusive, more equitable, they identified Initiative 10 as creating a director of public realm position within City Hall. So I think what changed pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, that all of a sudden the conversation about the value and the importance of public spaces really brought into a bigger tent to include real estate, big business, major employers, and the business community as well. Something that I think advocates from planners and urban designers have long called for. But all of a sudden now, the business community, your major employers, again, real estate, all came together and said, yeah, we need this. So I love showing this work chart because in a lot of ways, this is the day-to-day grind. I have the privilege of sitting in my team. We sit within the deputy mayor for operations team. So instead of creating a separate office focused on this work, we made an intentional decision to stay within the deputy mayor for operations portfolio, because I think one of the things we learned very quickly is that chain of command is really important in government. And most of the capital agencies that have oversight and jurisdiction over our built environment sits within the operations portfolio. But again, as part of what we have learned and what my team and I have learned over the past couple of years is that on a day-to-day basis, we are really interacting with all these different verticals. I've gotten to know, I see Yvonne here from OMB. I've gotten to know OMB colleagues very well and had to learn city budgeting very quickly. And also our uniform agencies, the FDNY team, the NYPD team, who have been really critical partners to making sure as we are thinking about designing new public spaces, that their operational considerations are also a factor. All right, the realm is vast, everybody. How do we organize this work? No, we don't have a team of 100 people. It's a team of 5 or 6 of us within the DMO team. And so much of our sort of ability to move and change, I think, comes from leadership. So a lot of buy-in from the mayor and the deputy mayor level and the commissioner level. And then I think at the end of the day, a lot of the staff, I call them the public realm Avengers. I think staff across these agencies, including OMB and law, who are passionate about making New York public spaces better, have been really critical partners with us in this work. So the way I love to talk about and explain how we have organized our portfolio is hardware, software, and orgware. Hardware, what I mean by that is the public space footprint, constantly looking for ways to expand that footprint for pedestrians. I am biased, I will say that now. I will put my biases out. I am biased for pedestrians. I think pedestrians should be the main character in New York City, and we are oriented with that in mind. And so much of what we've been focused on with our agencies is how do we deliver these capital projects faster? There's a whole separate work stream being led by Deputy Mayor Joshi and my colleagues on the DMO team and DDC Commissioner Tom Foley to change and reform the way city government deliver capital projects. And so that's some of the things we've been working very closely with, trying to implement some of those kind of reform and new policies in some of the projects I'll be showing. Software. What do I mean by software? You all know the physical space is one thing, but the real magic to making spaces come alive and feel great to be in is how well they're maintained, right? And the kind of programming activity that's happening. The city of New York, we cannot do that by ourselves, full stop. We desperately rely on partners. Bids, I see Barbara Blair from the Garment District here. Our bid partners are, to me, the original public realm officers of New York City. They have been in the front lines of doing all of that incredible maintenance operations, all of the non-sexy work that happens to making spaces vibrant. They are critical partners, including community groups and nonprofits. But guess what? The city, unfortunately, makes that partnership sometimes really difficult. So part of what we've been doing on the software piece is cutting red tape and making it an easier kind of customer service experience for partners who want to help us with this work. Orgware, I'll get into that in a little bit, but basically that is the internal sort of culture within city government. I think one of the things I learned coming into city government is that our agencies are being tasked with more and more things and having to do more with less resources. I think the staffing constraints are real. Of course, the budget constraints are real. So we were really mindful when we came in as a new sort of initiative and effort to take the time and really understand what are our agencies doing, how are they prioritizing their work, what do they need help with, and how can we be value add, as opposed to just another layer of a city hall task force or another round of meetings that they have to attend, but bring some value to within city government. Last year, we put out a report, Realm of Possibility. Go check it out. It's online. You can see more detail and information about our projects and initiatives. But I'm always so blown away by just like the sheer scale of the city and how much public space our agencies are maintaining on a day-to-day basis. And so in the next few slides, you will see some of the priority projects that we're working on. And the ethos, I think, for us and our team has been, if you build it, they will come. So in other words, whenever you create a little tiny space for pedestrians, people vote with their feet pretty quickly, and that little space gets filled. And so I'm really excited to share some of the priority projects and some of the highlights. Broadway Vision. New York City Department of Transportation, in partnership with the Flatiron Nomad bid, and Union Square partnership as well, have done just an absolute transformation of the spine of Manhattan. I call it now the piazza of New York City, because you really immediately sense and feel what that difference makes, that space. And it has done wonders for all the storefronts and retail and the hospitality industry along this corridor as well. So this is something that has become, I feel like, a real kind of North Star to what happens when I think the city and stakeholders in this district really come together in an intentional way and transform the space. DOT has continued to make this incredible transformation from 17th Street all the way up to 34th, Harold Greeley. And of course, there's always ambitions and goals to continue that transformation work up north of the bow tie. The Arches, another marquee project. I have to give a shout out to Rosa Chang and Megan Bostrom from Gotham Park nonprofit. So this is what will be 9 acres of open space under the Manhattan side of the Brooklyn Bridge. I love talking about this project because this was really so organic and grassroots. It was a handful of really dedicated community residents and stakeholders who reached out to City Hall and basically took us on a walking tour and said, look at all of these historical pictures of what under the Brooklyn Bridge on the Manhattan side used to be. Like, why can't we have this today? We were so incredibly inspired by the history and the vision and the possibility. And so really encourage all of you, if you haven't gone, especially when the weather is warmer. In fact, actually, Gotham Park, I think you guys, and welcome to Chinatown, there you're doing a Lunar New Year celebration in some of the spaces that we have opened up starting, I think, this Friday and into this weekend. So everybody, that's my plug for our local nonprofit partners and this event space. It's incredible. So this is an example of a project where it's low-hanging fruit. So what we had to do, not that it didn't involve a lot of work, but basically the community group brought this sort of idea to us. The deputy mayor, myself, others at City Hall really loved it. We sat down with the DOT commissioner and his leadership team and say, what could we do to make this happen and open up that space? And so everybody, I think, was really excited about this idea, and it required resources, but it's not like a massive capital, project just in terms of the phase 1 to open up that space. So we've opened up that space. I think Gotham Park is in the process of being a plaza partner with DOT to help maintain and activate that space. And we have dreams and goals to actually transform and do capital upgrades into that space as well. So more on that hopefully soon this spring. Future of Fifth, it's another really transformational project. This one, if you haven't heard about it yet, it is basically taking 20 blocks from Bryant Park to Central Park and transforming that entire corridor into a world-class pedestrian boulevard. And again, the idea is a lot of other cities have done this. If you go to Paris, London, Madrid, a lot of global cities in terms of their main sort of shopping and commercial district have really focused on, again, pedestrians as the main character. Why? Because the retailers, the storefronts, all the landlords, they really understand what that means and what that does to their bottom line when you create attractive spaces for pedestrian. Right now, as you all know, I don't think no New Yorker really actively says, oh yeah, I can't wait to go to Fifth Avenue. And so what we want to do is, again, transform that 20 blocks, make it a tree-lined street, double the width of sidewalks on both the east and west side is a massive undertaking. And I'll tell you a little bit behind the scenes anecdote. I think one of the happiest and most excited partners that we have on this project is Department of Environmental Protection, the team at DEP. Why? Because the pipes under Fifth Avenue are almost 200 years old. The street has never been opened up to make those critical infrastructure repairs. And so it's a matter of time. And I think the business community, the bids from Bryant Park Corporation, Grand Central Partnership, Fifth Avenue Association, Central Park Conservancy, my colleague David is here from there, who's been incredible partners on this project, thought partners on this project. there was a recognition that says it's a matter of time before we have to do some major critical infrastructure work on this avenue. And if we're going to rip up the streets, let's put it back better than ever and give it the makeover that it really needs and deserves. And so this is a really exciting effort. We are underway with taking concept design into 100% construction design. And we're looking to break ground, I think, in 2027. Queensway, another marquee project that we've been working on involving a whole host of stakeholders, including the Trust for Public Land, who I saw here earlier today, and Friends of the Queensway. Again, I think this was a real sort of like local homegrown effort of many years by local residents and advocacy groups and nonprofits who had this vision to really transform this sort of old abandoned railway into what will be like the High Line of Central Queens. In 2022, the administration announced a commitment of $35 million to do phase 1 of the project, which is at the Metropolitan Hub in Forest Hills. It will be about 0.7 miles worth of greenway and public space transformation. It will have things like a two-way bike lane, a ped path, and other sort of fitness amenities that the communities wanted. And so I think it's set to break ground on this in 2026 on phase 1. And of course, the thing that made the news around Queensway recently is that we also secured about $117 million, federal dollars, to fund phase 2 of this project. And yes, we got the federal government and the grant team to sign the paperwork, sign the checks. So we're secure that this part of the funding is in place, and we'll keep that moving. Chinatown Connections and Kim Lau. For those that are familiar with this area, you know that this part of Chinatown is notorious for having a really crazy, like, 6-way intersection. I think there's a lot of sort of government types who's familiar probably with that area near all the government buildings. But what has been really, and I think talking to colleagues at City Planning, Economic Development Corporation, DOT, for a long time, everybody sort of recognized that, the Brooklyn Bridge gets hundreds and thousands of tourists, a year. And they are literally a stone's throw away from Chinatown. Some of the most amazing businesses and eateries is right there. But from a wayfinding and a pedestrian sort of perspective, you have no idea how to get there from the Brooklyn Bridge. And also, it's not just about tourists; it's about all the local residents, who live there, all the government workers that work there. It's just really hard to navigate. The wayfinding is difficult, and it kind of feels like a police state because of all the different infrastructure in that civic center area. And then, not to mention this crazy 6-point intersection. So a year ago today, almost, it was last Lunar New Year, the City of New York, we announced in partnership with the state, a $55.6 million investment to, again, improve that pedestrian connectivity from the Brooklyn Bridge down to Park Row, all the way into this intersection. And the goal and the vision here is to expand the plaza footprint, create a new kind of Kim Lau Square Plaza, and then reduce the number of crazy kind of crossings that exist today. And so a really bold, transformative project that is advancing, and we think that is going to really become a destination place for Chinatown, for residents and visitors alike. Okay, so those are some of the capital projects. So you have a sense of some of the big public space capital projects that we're working on. How are we improving the quality of life for New Yorkers? These are going to get into some of the policies that we're pushing and focused on. Ben mentioned earlier in the introduction, outdoor dining, a massive program that we had to take from a temporary emergency status into a formal program. That has been just a real sort of slog with City Council, and we finally got to this compromise solution of a seasonal roadway program. The team has worked really hard to make sure that we try to make this program as attractive for possible for restaurants. DOT has done an incredible job just working around the clock to get this program up and running. And hopefully come April 1st, you guys will see beautiful new outdoor dining setups that don't look like apartments on the street, but more, outdoor cafes. Scaffolding, another major initiative that we are pushing for. This is a uniquely New York City problem, folks. You go to any other city older than New York with just as old buildings, they don't have this kind of amount of scaffolding that we have here. Now, under the leadership of Commissioner Otto at Department of Buildings, we are pushing for new designs. We are pushing for reforms, potentially to local law 11 that is requiring buildings to be inspected every 5 years. That really is the generation of the source of creating a lot of the scaffolding. And we have a set of real package of legislation sitting before City Council right now that would really give Department of Buildings more tools to, especially, it's carrots and sticks. This would be more sticks for landlords that have sheds that have been up 5 years or longer. Because the bottom line is, as long as the cost of repairing facades is more expensive than the cost of keeping the sheds up, the sheds will stay up, which is why we have like 10 plus old sheds right now on the street. Commercial mobility, everybody here orders. Everybody here orders from, to get their food, their salad delivered in 10 minutes. This has really resulted in a whole new industry, but a real impacts on the street. The feedback that we've gotten across, in every community town hall is that it feels really difficult navigating the streets now sometimes with these new devices that are going a lot faster. So we've been working tirelessly with City Council to try to craft a new type of legislation that would effectively ask the app companies to have more skin in the game and more accountability around behaviors of the micromobility devices on the street. So you all should be hearing more about that soon. But basically, right now the conversation has been a lot of pitting like workers and heavy enforcement on the workers. And part of what we are feeling is that there's a core business model here that is incentivizing speed. And until we get at that core business model, I don't think we're going to see systemic change. So we're asking and we're proposing legislation that will create a new licensing for these companies that would have to adhere to greater accountability and data standards. Public restrooms, it's another issue that comes up all the time. We get so many requests for this. I'm going to say something kind of controversial, which is I don't think we are going to be able to build our way as a city out of this problem. So we have to look at other types of solutions. My team and I, we've been talking to other European cities. They have other types of programs in place, like giving businesses a subsidy or some funding to open up their restrooms for the public. Different types of incentives in order to have more public restroom access. Our Parks Department is doing an incredible job testing now. They call it the Portland Loo, other types of bathroom structures that is like more cost effective and would be faster to install. But in terms of, again, citywide, when I think about, Midtown Manhattan, where there is such a need, but there is just a dearth of public space. I think having the city build new bathrooms is a very difficult proposition, and I'd be really open. And we're looking at other ways, incentives that we can give businesses to make their restrooms more available. Lastly, cutting red tape. I alluded to this in the beginning of my remarks. We can't do this as a city. We need everybody in this room, but we make it very hard. And some of the things that I think have always driven us, our team, is customer service and user experience. What is it like for a bid to work with the city to try to maintain a plaza or public space? What are the maintenance agreements like? What is the liability indemnification requirements like? Some of it is really onerous. Some of it is for a reason, to protect all the parties, but some of it is really onerous and almost makes that partnership really difficult. That's at the high end. For just community groups that want to host an open street on a Saturday, why do they have to take on insurance, right? If they just want to do face painting or some little activities. So we are always trying to put ourselves from the end user and the customers first and try to cut red tape and streamline processes where we can to make that experience better. It has been, incredible 2 years. We've been off to the races. One of the things that, one of the first conversations I had when I was first appointed this role was with Dan Doctoroff. And his advice, which really has imprinted on me, is that, to have these to have the privilege of being in these roles at City Hall, you have to act with both urgency and patience. And I think that's a really good way to sort of kind of synthesize all of the learnings and all of the work that we have done in the last 2 years. And because I see so many incredible partners that I do work with on a day-to-day basis, I also just want to say thank you. I think we have been so overwhelmed by the incredible kind of response that we've gotten from partners within government and also outside of government that really believe in this collective endeavor to succeed. This is what makes New York, New York. This, we believe, and our thesis is that this is, in fact, our secret sauce. And we really need to work together to figure out how we can deliver these massive capital projects, on time, on budget, so that the public can see that government can build and deliver big capital projects. We have to have a customer service, user experience approach when it comes to dealing with partners. And there's so many partners that the city relies on to do this work. And lastly, we have to act with urgency and patience collectively to make all of these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ya-Ting. We're going to open it up for a few audience questions. We have 2 microphones. We're going to go back and forth here. We'll probably get to about 4 or 5 questions, so don't make the lines too long. And also, just before we start the questions, please make them a quick question, not a speech. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you. Never a speech. So, a few years ago, the affirmation towers was approved. This was Don Peoples and the McKissick Company. They were to put up affirmation towers. And then the governor said no. Would that be a consideration for your company to, your agency to work with others to revive that concept?
You said affirmation.
Aspiration.
Aspiration.
Affirmation.
Affirmation.
Affirmation. Affirmation towers.
Affirmation towers. I'm not familiar with that, but happy to take your information and get more info. I'm not familiar with that project or that proposal.
Thank you. It's
Thank
a great
you.
project for
All
our
right.
city. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello, good morning, Ms. Lou, right? My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I want to know why you haven't presented about daylighting. I want to know what's your take about daylighting.
Yeah.
The daylighting situation in New York City. What's your take? I know it's a kid got murdered on Portland and Myrtle. His name is Kamari Hughes. Rest in peace to Kamari Hughes. And the solution the city put was like a cheap little bumper and a bike rack. I want to know what's your take about daylighting? What's your plan about that?
Yeah, daylighting, absolutely. I think it's daylighting is a policy that I know a lot of the transportation alternatives, open plans, a lot of the safe streets advocates have been pushing for, basically saying it's really important to clear the corners right? So drivers have visibility when people are crossing, particularly kids. This is something that I think the mayor, our deputy mayor, our Department of Transportation Commissioner Rodriguez has really supported. I believe last year the DOT completed daylighting treatment and intervention at about 1,000 intersections, and they're working to provide more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For our next question, nobody else get up. We'll try to get through the people that are standing already, and then we'll wrap. Go ahead.
Hi, first of all, just amazing work and so important for public space folks, not just in New York, but around the world. Tim Tompkins, now at NYU and Brookings Metro, used to be at Times Square, and then before that, Partner Sister Parks. One of the things we found when the plazas were being created, with the help of folks like Anthony Crowell, and then later on Ben Furness, who's now TA, folks at Davis Wright Tremaine, was that the underlying legal frameworks for regulating and managing public space depended on the agencies and places like DOT and even DCA that regulate vendors and things weren't really set up. The legal precedents didn't help in terms of managing things like commercial activity in public space and many other things. How does, in terms of the patient side of things,
Yeah.
long time to untangle that, how does sort of reframing some of those legal precedents and ways of regulating public space fit into your plans?
Yeah, it's a big topic. I think what we have done is just taken it more sort of like just like the day to day. So we haven't like gone and unpacked the whole sort of legal framework. I think we started at a more maybe practical or just doable level, which is, okay, the bids right now have maintenance agreements they need to sign with the city. And those maintenance agreements have over time become incredibly burdensome, and maybe because of the underlying sort of legal framework dissonance and issues have become these a little bit kind of a Frankenstein, a little bit, really kind of onerous. And the bids, and these are some of the most well-resourced bids in Manhattan, for example, we're finding themselves spending an inordinate amount of time and resources just navigating the contract itself. And so we had to all sort of take a step back and said, hold on here. What is the end goal we are what is the outcome we are trying to achieve? And do the things that we're asking the bids to be liable for, does that actually make sense and sort of get to our shared goals? So we were able to really reduce some of the onerous liability requirements that kind of built up over time in those agreements.
Hi, Claire Mifflin from the Center for Zero Waste Design. As you know, I've been advocating for waste containerization to be done in a way that improves public space and helps get us to zero waste. And I feel that the way Department of Sanitation is doing it is just leading to a lot of bins on sidewalks that are not improving our commercial corridors, especially once you've got 1 to 9 families above. So you're really lining those streets with both residential and commercial bins. Yeah. Similarly with the large buildings in the CB9 pilot. I know you don't have jurisdiction, but I wonder if your office is like trying to analyze the impacts of that, because these pilots are done and the only thing we hear in terms of analysis is it's reduced 311 rat complaints. No, really, like what was the pilot trying to test and what were the findings? So what are the implications for public space? I wonder if that's something you can push for some analysis to be done on how it's impacted our streetscapes, or even, do in some way.
Yeah, no, I think, you've been sort of making this point and raising these flags. And I think as the pilots and the containerization rules spread out, as a pedestrian, you're just seeing that, right, walking around the city. I think this suggestion of an analysis is really a good one. I don't know that we have the capacity to take it on ourselves, but if you know of like organizations or academic institutions or like a group of research students that want to partner on something like that, I think we can certainly, I think we'd be open to exploring that kind of partnership.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning. I'm Jeff Malamy. I work at the Department of Transportation. And I've been familiar with your work since you've been at Tri-State. I read some of those papers back in the day. So I followed your career, and your trajectory has been kind of laid out in the introduction. And I'm curious just to hear from you about, as you've been advocating the space around these issues for a very long time. And relatively new to city government. And so in your current position, right, I think previously you've been knocking on the door,
Yeah.
right, of this kind of seat of power, and now
Yeah.
you're in the position of authority. So in your current position, what has been revealed to you that has been disillusioning? On the other hand, what's been revealed to you that's been inspiring?
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that question. Man, I always say, like, throughout my career, I was on the steps of City Hall, asking for, different legislations or bills to change. And this was my first opportunity to be inside and really understand how government works. I think one of the things that I've learned being on the inside is that when you're on the outside, you're just like frustrated. It's the impatience, right? You want everything to happen so quickly. Like, oh, why is this bus lane taking forever? Why is this taking, like, everything seems to be taking forever. But once you're on the inside, I just have like a profound appreciation of the layers of kind of constraint that people within government and our public servants within government have to operate in. And that's something that I think folks on the outside don't have as a deep of appreciation. I also think that one of the things I've also learned is that, like, so much of life is about prioritization. And so much about this work and what gets through and what moves is about priority and who sets the priority, right? And so I think that's when, like, leadership at the agency levels, at the city hall levels is actually really important to a lot of the different types of issues and work. So, whether it's like housing or transportation or parks and public space, I think the prioritization, I think you see that in terms of movement and traction. So I think those are the two things that, and that's when leadership, really, really matters when it comes to that.
Morning. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed your talk. Congestion pricing is in a perilous position, as Trump is saying he will get rid of it, and publications like the New York Post are on a crusade to turn people against it. Nevertheless, a new poll just released showed 60% of voters are in favor, and 75% of commuters see reduced traffic. My question is, what more can the entire administration do, including media appearances, op-eds, LinkedIn, New York City messaging, in a concentrated effort to further build public support and save congestion pricing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I knew I wouldn't get out of here without a congestion pricing question. Thank you.
At least
Thank
it's in
you for that.
favor.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Thank you. I would say that our Department of Transportation has worked very kind of closely with the MTA to sort of set up the system and have it sort of launch and go. I know that our DOT and MTA, they are gathering data and trying to really let the numbers sort of speak for themselves in terms of the impact and the positive benefits that we have seen from congestion pricing getting turned on in terms of bus speeds, travel speeds, just the levels of traffic and congestion. It's still early days, but I think collecting that data and having that sort of like having the numbers just speak for itself very clearly is a really important part of the work that we're doing right now. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is David Krulowicz. I work for a company called Volt Post, which retrofits existing streetlights into EV chargers. A presentation was great, but there was no discussion of EV charging and how that's going to be a growing issue in the city. I know the DOT has put out a statement. They want 10,000 EV chargers on the street across the city, and just want to sort of get your take on like how all this is balanced with the growing demand for electric vehicles in the city.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, if you guys haven't seen already, the increasing demands on our street space, that is the most contested, hotly in demand real estate, and it's finite. And so I think EV charging and in that infrastructure where it's placed is going to be really important. And I like the idea of like charging with like existing light poles or some other infrastructure, particularly again, in the most sort of dense commercial areas where every inch of sidewalk space and curb space, it has just like 20 other competing needs for it. And so I think just broadly, I know the DOT, there is a DOT sort of like EV team looking at this, looking at it spatially to see like where the demand would be. Maybe it's like the sort of ride share or the TLC driver kind of industry base. And it made more sense to place those chargers where people are living or where the cars are sort of stored in garages, et cetera. So just more spread out, not all sort of necessarily in the Manhattan congestion zone.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I work for a nonprofit park conservancy. And as you know, as part of also the New Yorkers for Parks Advocacy Coalition, public parks are begging for 1% of the city's budget. It's super problematic. The park's infrastructure is falling apart. So as much as I love to see the street trees and all of these great public space initiatives being built, we obviously need more funding for public space. It's super problematic that we're relying on private funding. And I'm just curious, the New Yorkers for Parks Advocacy Coalition's been working since 2004 to try to get a tiny fraction of the budget. And I would love your insights on how we can truly secure baseline positions, help the green workforce, and support the land, because it really is necessary, to say the least.
Yeah, no, look, the value of our parks and playgrounds and the value of like the Parks Department and what they do, it is incredibly important and I think profound. And I think it's key to sort of like keeping families in the city and for New Yorkers' quality of life. We are advocating, internally for funding and resources for our agencies all the time, including the Parks Department. I know that New Yorkers for Parks, the Playfair Coalition, and I think even Center for Urban Future, they've been doing a lot of policy proposals and like new ideas and how we can generate more funding and different ideas. I think all of that is like really important. I'm sorry, I don't have a satisfactory answer other than to say, like, keep up the work. I think the advocacy, the campaigning, and maybe this is my bias from having once come from that side of being on the steps and calling for things. I think the outside push and the noise making and the advocacy all is really important to help. Again, when I say it's all about priorities, like everybody has a priority, everybody has a funding request and ask. And so we're doing what we can internally on the Deputy Mayor for Operations side to advocate for our agencies, including parks, but having this external coalition with a concerted campaign to really push is very important. Like I think the Library Coalition, for example, they did an incredible job, right? And launched a really impactful campaign. And I think you and the coalition has done really incredible work as well. And just like, keep it up, don't give up, don't let up, keep at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again all for being here today. And thank you one more time to Ya-Ting Liu for the presentation. Thank you. Please join us again in the coming weeks. Thanks, everybody.